We're going to talk about John Calvin today. Now, that's a name you probably hear in history class, but his real importance can get a little lost.
It really can. I mean, we're talking about a guy born back in 1509.
Almost 500 years ago.
Exactly. And yet his ideas about faith, about money, about how to behave, they still have a huge impact on how we think about government, school, and even our jobs today.
So that's what we want to get into. We're going to try and cut through all the history and get to the core of what he was arguing.
Right. We'll focus on his most famous book, The Institutes of the Christian Religion, and really how the ideas in it kicked off massive changes all across Europe.
So let's start with him. Who is this guy? He was French, a brilliant student by all accounts.
Total genius. And his father had big plans for him. He pushed him to study law.
The most practical, profitable career path.
His dad wanted him to be a successful, established lawyer. But something else was pulling at him.
The Reformation.
The Reformation. He was just drawn to these new religious ideas. And here's the interesting part. That legal training his dad paid for, it became his greatest weapon.
How so?
Well, when he started writing about God, he didn't write like a philosopher. He wrote like a lawyer building an airtight case. Super logical, very clear, step by step.
That's a huge pivot, taking that legal mind and applying it to faith. But of course, that made things difficult for him.
It made France unsafe, yeah. He had to leave. His ideas were just too powerful, too challenging to the old way of doing things. He became an intellectual in exile.
Which brings us right to the book that made him famous, The Institutes of the Christian Religion. The first version came out in 1536.
And he wrote it in Latin at first.
Right, so that all the educated people across Europe could read it and debate it.
But it wasn't just for scholars. It had a really practical purpose. It was designed to be a clear, kind of easy-to-follow guide to Protestant belief.
A lifeline for people.
A total lifeline. I mean, people were being persecuted, even executed, for these beliefs. This book gave them a clear answer to, what do you believe and why?
And he made a very smart political move with that first edition. He dedicated it to the King of France.
That was a brilliant defense strategy. He was basically saying, look, we're not troublemakers trying to overthrow the government.
We're peaceful citizens, and here's a totally rational explanation of our faith.
He was trying to make the movement seem legitimate, right from the very start.
And it started small, almost like a pamphlet, but he just kept adding to it over the years.
Oh, it grew into a massive work. And crucially, it got translated into French pretty quickly. That meant everyday people could read it, not just scholars. And that's what really cemented him as a major leader of the Reformation.
Okay, so let's get into the ideas themselves. To understand Calvin, you have to start with his foundation, which is the absolute power of God. The word you hear is sovereignty.
Right. And in simple terms, that just means total control. Calvin believed God is in charge of every single detail in the universe. Everything. Nothing is an accident. It's all part of a divine plan.
What did that mean for an individual person? It sounds a little intimidating.
It's both. On one hand, yeah, it means you have to show immense respect for God, but on the other, it was incredibly comforting.
How so?
Well, if you believe a powerful, all-knowing God is steering the ship, then when you face hardship, sickness, losing your job, you can keep working hard and stay faithful.
Because your struggles aren't random. They're part of the plan.
Exactly. It brought a sense of stability to a very unstable world.
Okay, now for the idea that everyone knows, and the one that causes the most debate, predestination.
A big one. And it follows logically from sovereignty. If God controls everything, then he must have already decided who gets eternal life.
And who doesn't?
And who doesn't. And this is the critical part. That decision is completely separate from anything you do in your life. Your good deeds can't earn you a spot.
Wait, so if the decision is already made, why bother being good? That seems like it would make people just, give up.
That's the question everyone asks. But for Calvin, this wasn't about being harsh. It was supposed to highlight God's mercy.
Explain that.
The thinking is, since humans are imperfect, nobody deserves to be saved based on their own actions. So, if you are saved, it's a pure gift, an act of unearned grace.
So it's supposed to make you humble and grateful, not proud of how good you are.
Exactly. but it did create a kind of anxiety.
I was going to say, how do you live your life not knowing if you're one of the chosen ones, the elect?
You look for signs. That's what people did. They couldn't know for sure, so they looked for evidence.
And what were the signs?
Living a very disciplined, moral life, being successful and productive in your job, studying the Bible. So weirdly, the idea that your actions don't save you actually motivated people to act in incredibly moral, hardworking ways.
To prove to themselves and everyone else they were probably one of the elect.
It was a massive psychological driver.
That makes so much sense. And if you're looking for signs and trying to live a certain way, you need a rule book, which leads us straight to the Bible.
Absolutely. For Calvin, the Bible was it. The only true source of knowledge for everything, not just faith, but for government, for your daily life. It was the final authority.
And that had a huge practical effect on, of all things, reading.
It was a revolution in literacy. Because if the Bible is the final word, you can't just have a priest read it to you. Calvin insisted that everyone needed to be able to read it for themselves.
Which created this massive demand for education and for Bibles,
Right.
translated into local languages.
A huge demand. It changed everything.
So he's got this complete system of belief, and then he gets the chance to actually build a society around it.
In Geneva, Switzerland, he was invited to help create a model Christian city, a real-world laboratory for his ideas.
And what did that look like? I mean, we always hear that life in Calvin's Geneva was incredibly strict.
It was. He worked with the city council to create laws based on his interpretation of the Bible. Life became very disciplined.
What kind of rules are we talking about?
Well, they had a council called the consistory, made of pastors and respected citizens' elders, and their job was to monitor people's private behavior.
So they were watching everyone.
They were. There were laws against gambling, against dancing, against wearing flashy clothing. They even regulated what you could name your children.
Wow. Only biblical names.
Pretty much. It was a top-to-bottom effort to create a perfectly ordered society.
That sounds intense.
Good.
How did people react to that level of control?
You'd think they would hate it. But you have to remember the alternative. Many people were fleeing intense religious persecution elsewhere in Europe.
So Geneva, even with all its rules, felt safe.
It felt safe and orderly. It became a magnet for refugees. They valued the structure, even if it was strict.
That structure and discipline bleeds into what might be his biggest economic idea, the Protestant work ethic.
This is where his thinking really reshaped the world. He taught that every single job, a baker, a blacksmith, a politician, was a holy calling from God.
So your everyday work wasn't just work. It was a way to serve God.
Precisely. It moved holiness out of the church and into the workshop and the marketplace. And the economic impact was just monumental.
Because if your work is holy, you take it very seriously.
You work hard. You don't waste time. You don't waste money on luxuries. You save, you're thrifty, and you reinvest your profits back into your business.
And that mindset, hard work, saving, reinvesting, is basically the engine of capitalism.
Many historians argue it's a key ingredient. Yeah. It took root in places where Calvinism was strongest.
And to support all this, he knew you needed educated people.
Absolutely. Education was essential. He helped found the Academy of Geneva. And it wasn't just for training pastors.
What did they teach?
A full curriculum. Grammar, logic, philosophy, in addition to religious studies. He wanted to create well-rounded, educated citizens who could read the Bible for themselves.
And participate in government and the church.
Exactly. And the students who graduated from Geneva went back home and started their own schools. It created this network that helped the Reformation survive and grow.
So to manage all this, he set up a specific structure for the church. It's known as Presbyterianism.
And the whole point was to avoid having one person with all the power, like a pope or a bishop. It was a system of checks and balances.
It had four main roles. Right?
4 key roles.
Yeah.
First, you had the pastors. Their job was to preach and handle the main ceremonies, like baptism.
Right. Then the teachers.
The teachers were in charge of explaining the complex ideas and, really importantly, educating the kids.
Then you had the elders. These were regular people, right?
Yep. Respected members of the community. They were the ones on the consistory, watching over everyone's behavior and making sure the rules were followed.
And finally, the deacons.
The deacons were like the social services of the church. They took care of the poor, the sick, and organized charity. So power was spread out among all these different groups.
And this whole system just spread.
Like wildfire. A guy named John Knox took it to Scotland and founded their national church on it. It was huge in the Netherlands, where it fueled their fight for independence.
And in England, The Puritans adopted these ideas and eventually brought them over to the American colonies.
So when Calvin died in 1564, his personal story ended, but his ideas were just getting started. That focus on discipline, on work, and on respecting the written word as the ultimate authority is still with us.
And here's the final piece that's so interesting. That church structure, with its shared governance between pastors and elders, it looked a lot like a representative government.
It was a working model.
Thinkers later on looked at that system of checks and balances and used those concepts to help build modern ideas about democracy and the separation of powers. His religious ideas actually helped shape modern politics.
It's an incredible legacy.
So here's something to think about. Consider the rules at your school or even in your community. How many of those rules about being on time, working hard, being accountable for your actions are really rooted in this very old idea that personal discipline is the key to a good and successful society?
That knowledge is now yours to build upon. Good luck with your studies.